So about us. My name is Carl West, and I'm here today with my colleagues Ruth Walker, Jane Smith, Patty Corcoran, and Jane Smith. So about our sessions, we decided that we're going to do set it up as 3 sessions. We was going to originally have 5, but we knocked it down to 3. So the first part is myself speaking about skills, people with skills, abilities and cancer. Then I'm going to pass over to Jane and Patsy, who will be doing people with learning disabilities, advocacy and cancer. And I'll be passing over to Ruth. We'll be doing clear information, communication and cancer. Could I ask you to put your hands up to the following 5 questions? My first question is, does everyone make everyday choices? Do you feel part of your local community? Do you make important decisions about your life? And do people treat you with respect? Do people listen to your views? Just imagine if most people in the audience today had a learning disability. I just wonder how many hands would have gone up. Lots of people with learning disabilities do not have choice and control in their own lives. So the definition of learning disability, I'm not going to read this, I'm just going to leave it up for a couple of minutes. So in real life, a learning disability is when someone learns to do things slower. Sometimes someone may find it difficult to understand complicated words or to concentrate for a long time. Some people may use a wheelchair and find it hard to get around. But we can still do what other people can do. So I moved into a care home in 2004. Now I live in my own flat. But I also travel independently, visiting family and friends in Yorkshire and Wales. I used to care for my father, who sadly passed away 6 years ago with a brain tumour. I used to be a carer for my dad when he was ill until he died. But I also shared a story in a book about learning disabilities, and also in a chapter about advocacy, support, and during bereavement and loss. I also co-chaired the regional and national MenCap meetings. But I also teach learning disability students, nurses, and health professionals. I regularly present and run workshops and events at meetings. These are just some of the skills I have achieved, but we all have our own skills and abilities. Myself, Ruth, Len and Roger, John, Lynn and Roger co-wrote a book chapter with Patsy about advocacy, communication, loss and bereavement. It is important to involve people with learning disabilities in conversations about cancer. When working on the chapter, John and Lynn talked about John using Makaton skills to support his sister when she had cancer. Makaton is just communication skill people can use instead of BSL. Hospital staff thought Jill could not understand what was going on. Jill was able to communicate with nurses by using Makaton. Jill's mum, Irene, talks about Jill's skills and abilities to speak up for herself. Jill loves life and everyone in it. It is important to always say people's rights, skills and abilities. It's going to be a short video round about Jill's story. Has anybody got any quick questions about what I've spoke about so far? Very good. I'll pass you over to Patsy Corcoran, who's going to do the second half of our presentation today.
Thank you, Carl. I hope you could all hear that. I know the volume is quite low. Could everybody hear the films? Because there's a few more to come. Yeah. Good morning. My name's Patsy, and thank you for inviting us to come and speak at this event. And it's really good to get a chance to meet people who aren't just involved in services for people with learning disability. And that's because people with learning disability are people who might be older, who might be from BME communities, who might be homeless, who might be whatever. So it's good that we're working together. So this part of the presentation, I'm going to work with my colleague Jane. We're going to talk a little bit about people with learning disabilities, advocacy and cancer, building on what Carl has said. But we wanted to start with the person. As Kath said, care needs to be person-centred, and we hear that a lot. But Carl's just demonstrated, I think, what that means, thinking about the person. So I'm going to be fairly quick with this, and hopefully you'll be familiar with some of the reports. If not, please look at them later if you get a chance. But MenCap have done a lot of work over the years. One particular report was the Treat Me Right report in 2004, which actually showed that people with learning disabilities generally have poorer health, have greater healthcare needs, and die younger than other members of the public. Die younger. A little bit later on in 2007, a lot of parents were writing to MenCap saying that their sons and daughters were dying from lack of care or indifference. And again, hopefully some of you will be familiar with those reports. The campaign, and it is a campaign, said that there is institutional discrimination within the NHS. This is across the NHS, and that people with learning disability get worse health care than non-disabled people. And there have been very many reports, investigations and inquiries since those reports. There was a government inquiry, people wrote to the Ombudsman, and what happened then is that the Ombudsman produced a report called the 6 Lives Report, and it focused on 6 people who were cited in the MenCap report, and their photographs and their names are there. I was going to spend a bit of time talking about Emma, who was 26 when she was diagnosed and died quite soon after with cancer, and actually there was no option to give Emma treatment. She had challenging behaviour, the professionals said. Her mum describes her very differently. Can't go into it, we've got a lot to get through today, but if you're particularly interested, that's one of the people that you could read more about. Generally, the report said that many healthcare professionals do not understand much about learning disability. And I have to say, we share information, speak at a lot of events, and generally the standard of understanding is good, but we still have people who really don't understand the very basics that a person with a learning disability is a person first. And you saw in the film somebody talk about diagnostic overshadowing. That happens a lot. And also, I think I might mention it on the next slide, people make assumptions about the value and the quality of somebody's life, which is why we think Jillie's film was so important. Very often, the report found that professionals don't consult and involve families and don't have an actual understanding of the law around capacity and consent to treatment, and that was one of the issues in Emma's story. And as I've just said about quality of life, many professionals rely inappropriately on their own assumptions without really knowing the person on what that person's quality of life may be like, and therefore whether they should go forward for treatment for things like cancer. Following all of those reports, the government said that there needed to be set up a confidential inquiry into premature deaths of people with learning disabilities, which has been shortened to SIPOLD. Actually, I think it's last week that SIPOLD finally finished their work, and really quickly, some of their results said that they were looking at people with learning disability and deaths in general, found that many weren't being reported. People were dying of learning disability. Well, that doesn't happen. What actually was happening was that those deaths weren't being investigated. So, a lot of those people were dying within healthcare situations. So there's a lot of unknowns about this. But what they did is they compared, I think it was 53 people, and they said that on average, they found that men died 13 years sooner than men without learning disability. 13 years. And these statistics astound me, that women died 20 years sooner than women without learning disabilities for a variety of reasons. What we're finding, and I think Kath said that people are living longer, is that cancer is one of the most underlying causes of death that has come out of the SIPOLD inquiry, and that people are living longer, so we are finding out more people are developing cancers. That death from cancer occurs at a much younger age, I think 26. The access to cancer screening services is variable. I suppose that's true for the whole population, but particularly people with learning disability and or autism. And the engagement in bowel screening programs is problematic. I'm going to have to speed up now, so again, if you're interested, there's a recent study by Derbyshire NHS Foundation Trust. You can find this on the NHS England website. But they said that people with learning disabilities have higher risk of developing certain types of cancers, and that as people are living longer, there's more risk of cancers in their overall life. Certainly people who are deemed to have additional health needs and potentially lower health literacy, which is being able to understand health information, being able to ask questions and a whole variety of other things, where communication might prevent people with learning disabilities from accessing prevention and treatment services, and that there are substantial inequalities, as I've said, regarding health screening. So in 2013, Reach worked with Keele University just with a small group of people to find out what they know and what they need to know about bowel cancer screening. We used lots of posters and flip charts, and people put their thoughts and ideas on that. So it's a very visual conversation. Health professionals talked about very basic things about how the body works and used a model to show people where different parts of the body were. At the end of the meeting, everybody said they'd actually learned a lot more about their own health and health screening. And one person said, I didn't like talking about cancer, but it is important. And I want you to remember that. That's quite key. Because people said three main things: that clear information, we're just going to talk about this, really important. Use clear words, use pictures, use anything. Awareness and meetings. People want to be able to find out about health. They want to be able to have these conversations that we sometimes as professionals think are too difficult to have with people. Not just at the time when somebody's potentially ill, but much sooner, so people can have conversations about everyday life, and cancer is part of everyday life. People did talk about how important support is throughout any stage of learning and going through any illness or treatment. I'm going to put on a short film, and then I'm going to hand over to Jane, who's going to talk a little bit about some of Assist's advocacy work around cancer.
Hi, as Patsy said, thank you for inviting us here to speak to you today. I'm going to give a brief overview of two cases that we've had in which the person had an advocate. The person had been diagnosed with cancer, or potentially was going to be diagnosed with cancer, and they had an advocate to support them through the process. The first person that I was going to speak about was Michael. Michael was a 61-year-old man who had a learning disability. I'd worked with Michael previously, but we had a new referral into us. It was suspected that Michael had got cancer, but at that point he hadn't been told. He'd been already for an ultrasound scan, and it was thought that he probably got quite advanced cancer in his liver, but then on he hadn't been informed. I think the thought of the carers were that they were trying to protect him from that, that news. But going forward, he was being taken to hospital appointments and being asked to go into machines, such as for a CT scan, without really having any information or knowledge about why that was being asked of him. And of course, those sorts of things would be daunting for anyone, but if you're being asked to go in there without any knowledge of why, then it's all the more distressing. So for Michael, this was a really awful and distressing experience, and he was refusing to go into the scanner, understandably, and at that point it was we were asked to get involved. I supported Michael at a meeting in which the consultant talked to him, and with us. I'd been, again, it was a bit of an advocacy dilemma, because on the phone I'd been told about the fact that Michael had probably got cancer, and then was asked to work with him without him having this knowledge. So, it was important that he really was told about it in a way that was appropriate for him, and then he could be supported in the best way, again, for him, really. Michael, as well as having a learning disability, he'd got a hearing impairment, and from working with him before, I knew that it worked best for Michael if things were written down, or if he saw pictures. So during the first appointment, I'd prepared some information in more of a clear and accessible way, so with words and pictures. So a picture of the scanner, and explaining that would be taking pictures, and that we were talking about the fact that the doctor thought he'd got a poorly liver, and then the doctor talked to Michael and explained really that they thought he'd got cancer. Going forward, we helped Michael to find out some more information about his condition, or potential condition, and Michael still refused to go into the scanner. He said that he didn't want to have the scan done, but his wishes in the end were respected. We talked to Michael about the sort of things that were important to him. He had a spell of time in hospital at one point, and for him, one of his main things was being at home. He also loved days out and holidays, and in the end, really, it was a best interest decision was made with the professionals involved, in that they would sort of look at giving treatment that would help to manage Michael's symptoms. It was thought that the cancer was very advanced, and that if further treatment such as chemotherapy or radiotherapy had been given, it would probably have spoilt the quality of life that Michael had got left, with the frequent hospital trips and feeling ill, and probably wouldn't have significantly lengthened his life. But having an advocate involved in that situation, it had helped Michael to be more empowered. He'd had information that enabled him to find out more about what was, going on really in his life. He'd some of his wishes had been respected. He did manage to fulfil some of his goals. Before he passed away, he did manage to go on a holiday. And overall, I think it was one of those situations where actually him being fully involved in what was going on in his life had sort of helped in those last times. I mean, sometimes we're told, when people might potentially have an advocate, why would you need an advocate? You've got lots of people involved. You might have family, doctors, nurses, social workers, all sorts of people. But sometimes it's just having that person that's completely independent and who's on that person's side throughout the process, really, to make sure that their voice and views are central to what's going on, and that they're, actively involved in the decisions being made about their lives at all times. So, because we're running out of time, I'm going to pass on to Ruth, who's going to continue.
Hello, I'm Ruth. This is my health experience, but it isn't about cancer, it's about my health experience. I fell and hurt my arm, so my mum took me to the walk-in centre at the Hayward Hospital in Stoke-on-Trent. I needed an X-ray, but the department closed at 6 p.m, so they put me a sling on and I went home, and I couldn't sleep and I was in a lot of pain. I went back for the X-ray the next day, and my arm was broken in 2 places. They sent me to the A&E, the University of Hospital of North Staffordshire. I was waiting for hours and nobody told me what was happening. Then I saw the doctor and he told me I needed an operation and he would try to do it that night. At 6 p.m, a nurse came to tell me I wouldn't be having the operation until the next day. I hadn't had anything to eat or drink all day. The next day I was really worried because I hadn't had my tablets, and the nurse didn't listen to me when I asked her. The nurse said my mum couldn't fetch them, but when she did come back, they said the tablets had to come in the original boxes, so my mum had to go back home again. I feel awful about my experience. It was horrible not knowing what was happening, and when the nurse didn't listen to me, I was very upset, setting for me and for my family. If this is how I feel with a broken arm, how would somebody with a learning disability with cancer feel? I'll just read out one, yeah. I feel sick because I was all alone. This is a short film.
Okay, so we talked a lot about why communication is really important. You particularly wanted to talk about PicTalk, which is an app that members worked on with Keele University and lots of health professionals, alongside a toolkit that's at the back of the room with some free communication books. If you haven't got one yet, please get one before you go. It would take me too long to tell you everything that PicTalk does, but it's a free app on iTunes and Google. You can get it on your iPad, not your iPhone, but you can get it on an Android phone. And basically, it's a communication aid, so please download it if you feel like it and have a play and find out what it can do. But you can add words to it and add photographs.
PicTalk is a good because if I struggle with words, I can use it on my iPad. I came with the idea with my own story. It shares on PicTalk, shows people how to help me, to support me. Patients and carers could use the PicTalk along with other tools to help plan and record their health appointments. Exploring PicTalk to think about the different ways to could use the resources in your work.
So we've mentioned the toolkit at the back. Again, a lot of the resources are free to download. Okay. We've used some of the Macmillan resources, haven't we, during our presentation? We found lots, actually. So we've just put a link up there just to remind you that there are lots of what are called easy read, clear information or videos that can be useful.
There is an easy health care website.
Thank you for listening about our presentation. I hope it has been interesting.